Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Saturday, July 8th, 2017. Mixed wet and dry thunderstorms continue to play the biggest role in our fire impacts for the next few days. Still continuing to see isolated to scattered mix of wet and dry thunderstorms today and into tomorrow. The better chance for wetter storms remains across the south and particularly the east. The higher elevations of Utah is where we'll likely see the best chance for precipitation and higher relative humidities. Storms will continue to moisten up into Sunday, but probably more significantly on Monday, especially again over portions of central and eastern Utah. We're also looking for some gusty winds with low RH moving into portions of the far western Great Basin for Sunday into Monday. A fuels and fire behavior advisory was issued for the Great Basin yesterday afternoon. The areas include portions of Nevada and Utah. There's three general distinctions for why we've issued the fuels and fire behavior. The first and probably most significant for the long term is the above average annual grass crop across much of central and northern Nevada and then also into western Utah. That's shaded in orange. The area shaded in red shows near record ERCs and low live fuel moistures. That's across much of central and southern Utah. And the area shaded in purple over eastern Nevada and western Utah shows the area where these two conditions come together, where we're seeing both an above average annual grass crop and current near record ERCs with low live fuel moistures. The main reason for issuing this fuels and fire behavior advisory is to inform firefighters that upon arriving in these areas, more advanced fire behavior is expected than would normally be anticipated under normal conditions. Storms were scattered throughout much of the Great Basin yesterday, particularly portions of central Nevada and Utah. Some of these storms did produce some very light precipitation. However, the storms over central and eastern Nevada were definitely on the drier side. Current fire activity is shown on this map with new initial attack fires popping out of some of that lightning in eastern Nevada and up into Utah. Current ERC conditions remain very critical across much of eastern Nevada and Utah. We are beginning to see a slight decrease in these values, particularly over southern Utah and the higher elevations. The image on the bottom right corner shows ERCs coming down just a bit from Thursday's high. We'll continue to see these values slowly decrease over the next few days. Areas further north and west may remain on the upward trend or at least stay high as we move into the first part of next week. 10-hour fuel moisture show that area of very low percentages decreasing somewhat across southern Utah, with western Utah and southern Nevada still remaining very low. This morning's satellite imagery shows a strong area of high pressure remaining in place right above the Great Basin. This will continue to allow moisture to spread throughout the area, and as it hangs around for the next few days, continued moisture will move in, especially over Utah. Another feature to look for is that area of low pressure off the Canadian coast. This will bring some of those winds to the western Great Basin as we move into the first part of next week. High-risk triggers have been issued today for much of central and eastern Nevada, southwest Idaho, and the lower elevations of Utah for these isolated to scattered mix of wet and dry thunderstorms today. Some of the higher elevations of Utah have received a little bit of precipitation, and we are seeing relative humidities a little bit higher in those areas, so they've been left out of the high-risk areas for today. Minimum relative humidities are still below 15% across low elevations region-wide, with the higher elevations of particularly Utah seeing a slight increase in those relative humidities with minimums in the 20s. And once again, those thunderstorms are expected across much of the Great Basin this afternoon. For tomorrow, the pattern continues with more moisture moving up into the Great Basin, allowing for thunderstorms to continue to develop. We're currently highlighting northeast Nevada and northwest Utah for the area of most concern for those thunderstorms to create problems for fires. Over northwest Nevada, however, that area of low pressure begins to move into the Canadian coast and will increase some wind speeds with low relative humidities in that area. Relative humidities will still remain in the single digits across western Nevada, where they'll be a little bit higher elsewhere. Thunderstorm coverage is expected to continue across eastern Nevada and Utah on Sunday, with some severe thunderstorms possible over the central Idaho mountains. On Monday, storms will continue across much of southern and eastern Great Basin, with a drying trend across the north and west. Gusty winds will continue to move across northwest and north central Nevada, and high-risk triggers have been issued in those areas. Thunderstorms on Monday will perhaps produce slightly more precipitation across the higher elevations of southern and eastern Utah. Relative humidities remain quite dry across northwest Nevada. The next 3 days worth of precipitation is shown here, with the bullseye of precip occurring over the higher elevations of Utah and up into western Wyoming and east central Idaho mountains. Nevada, especially western Nevada, looks to remain on the dry side through the first part of next week, where storms will produce little precipitation. By Tuesday, the moisture feed gets pushed a little bit further eastward into central and eastern Utah, with more dry air moving into the western half of the Great Basin. This trend continues into Wednesday, with storms continuing over the east and dry southwest flow across the west. On Thursday, that area of low pressure off the Canadian coast begins to make some movement, and this may bring some instability across the north and could potentially introduce thunderstorms once again into the northern portions of the region. Generally, drier conditions will start to move into Utah beginning the second half of next week. 7-day precip accumulations are shown here. They don't differ that much from the 3-day, with the moisture being limited mainly to central and eastern Utah, particularly the higher elevations, and then up into the higher elevations of Idaho and Wyoming as well. The extended forecast going into the third week of July, calling for continued above normal temperatures, particularly over the northern Rockies, and also a good signal for precipitation over much of the southern Great Basin. It looks like this monsoon moisture is going to stick around for a little while. This concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest update.